Welcome to Vermont Today. I'm your host, Terence Jeroloman, and my guests this month are Peter Shumlin. Peter is the Democratic candidate for Governor of Vermont, and Dr. Deb Richter. Dr. Richter practices medicine in primary care medicine in Cambridge, Vermont, and has been the leading advocate for single-payer health insurance for the past 20 years. It's good to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Terry.
Peter, how's the campaign going?
Well, it's going really well. You know, we had an extraordinary primary, 5 great candidates, all of whom would have made great governors. And, you know, I think the unusual thing about the campaign we just went through is we had over 60 forums and debates. We never said a negative word about each other. We all articulated a really positive vision for Vermont. 75,000 people got excited on August 24 and came out and voted. And I'm hoping that we can extend that to the next section of this campaign, which is the general election. I'm inviting Brian to run a positive campaign. I'm going to be articulating my vision for Vermont, how we can get Vermonters back to work. There's tremendous economic pain out there. We need all the help we can get, and I'll be driving a really positive, issue-oriented campaign.
Do you have a website where people can...
We do. There's really 3 things that we need right now if you want to join up. The first is folks will go out and knock on doors, make phone calls, volunteer. The second is convince your neighbors and friends that the contrast between myself and the person I'm running against is extreme, and that as a small business person and an experienced legislator who's gotten tough things done, I'm the person to put Vermonters back to work. So talk to your friends. And third, send money. We need money to go up in the air to beat Brian. And the website is www.shumlinforgovernor.com. So join up. We need you.
I urge everyone to join Peter's campaign. I already signed up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dr. Richter, would you like to tell our viewers something about your background and how you became interested in single-payer health insurance?
Well, I started out in Buffalo, New York, practicing in the inner city. And I found that when I was fresh out of residency, that 40% of my patients had no insurance. And they couldn't follow any prescriptions that I wrote for them because they had no health insurance. And I actually experienced many patients dying as a result of that. And it seemed so ridiculous in a country that as wealthy as ours. And when I investigated, I realized and did a lot of research that there were studies showing that we actually could cover everybody with the same amount of spending. And we could get more so everybody could be covered and spend actually slightly less than we were currently spending. But what we needed was a healthcare system, and we needed to basically eliminate the middleman and cover everybody through a tax-funded healthcare system. And that was what spurred me to do this, and I've been working on this issue for more than 20 years.
I'm originally from New York also. I grew up in the New York City area, and then I moved to Albany, New York. But for about the last 10 years that I lived there, I had no health insurance. And I had a doctor in Quebec. So I used to drive up to Stansted, Quebec for my medical exam once a year and to buy my medicine.
Right. I have many patients in my practice now who go up to Canada for their dental and for certain eye care and whatever because they're not covered for those particular services. So that's still happening.
Some people are concerned, though, about buying medicine in Canada and whether or not it's legal to bring it back across the border. I think that deters people from getting the better price. That's something that maybe, Peter, as governor, you could help people understand the law better or be able to get the medicine in Canada. We live so close that it's easy enough to drive up there.
Well, you know, this is a battle that I've been fighting for a long time. I am one of the politicians in America, one of the few that does not take money from the pharmaceutical industry. I think, we have a much larger problem, frankly, than being able to buy from Canada. We have to understand that Canada now has the 2nd worst pharmaceutical prices in the world. We're first. If you travel almost anywhere else in the world, you can buy the medicines that you need to survive, mostly made in America, or certainly by American companies, for 10, 15% of what we're paying here in America. The problem we have is that the politicians in Washington from both parties take the money from the pharmaceutical industry, and therefore change doesn't happen. What we need is a fair pharmaceutical pricing policy where the rest of the world pays their fair share, and we don't pay for the extraordinary profits, research and development, and direct marketing of the pharmaceutical industry. So that's a long story, but Canada is not going to solve, importation from Canada will not solve our problems, particularly with the Canadian dollar and the US dollar at par. We need politicians who have the courage to actually get fair prices from the pharmaceutical industry for the medicines that Vermonters need to survive, and I have a long track record of fighting that fight.
For the individual, though, it can be quite helpful to be able to go to Canada and get, I saved 30% on my Lipitor at that time.
Yeah, you wouldn't today. That's the bad news. What happened was there was so much pressure on, Senator Sanders worked really hard along with other members of Congress to open up the borders so that we could do importation. And what happened? Big Pharma started jacking the prices in Canada, and the Canadian dollar strengthened. And those two things have made the price spread much less significant than it was 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. That's why you don't see Bernie organizing bus trips to Canada anymore. So we really have to get to the, just like healthcare and what Dr. Richter is talking about, we need to get to the source of the problem. Let's talk about Vermont for a minute, just finances, and why I feel so strongly as governor that Vermont needs to be the first state in the country that has a single-payer healthcare system, and I will get it done as governor. Here's why. First of all, what Deb just talked about. She has patients who are dying because of a lack of access. So obviously there's the humanitarian side. There's also the financial side. Since Brian Doobie became lieutenant governor 8 years ago, Vermonters are now spending $2.5 billion more out of their pockets than they were 8 years ago. So just get the numbers here for a minute. We were spending $2.5 billion roughly 8 years ago. We're now spending over $5 billion. That is a tax on every working family in Vermont who's struggling for a job. That's a tax on every small business owner who's providing insurance to their employees, who's struggling to make a profit. It's a huge part of the economic problem that we have as a state. So I see jobs creation as my top priority. When I travel up in Franklin County and talk to small farmers, small business people, they say, I just can't afford it anymore. These healthcare costs are killing me. It's not that we don't like our providers. They're great. We have the best providers, bar none, in the country. But we need to get the insurance companies out of their way and allow them to make us healthier. And we can do that, reduce costs. Now, Terry, the other financial part of this is the state budget. What is the largest area of growth in the state budget? And we all know we have an unsustainable state budget right now. It's just like Vermont's families. It's health care. It's killing us. And so we need to get the cost under control in a single-payer system where health insurance is not an obligation of the employer but follows the individual. And when we do that, we'll create jobs. Employers in the other 49 states, I believe, will ask one question. How fast can we get to Vermont? Because it's a small business's biggest problem, providing adequate health insurance for their families. I know it. My little business, $110,000 a year for, frankly, what is really catastrophic insurance. That's what we're all down to now. We had the Cadillac Blue Cross Blue Shield when we started that business 25, 30 years ago, or took it over. This is the story of Vermont's families. This is the story of struggling Vermont small businesses. I have the courage as governor to work together with people like Deb and others to fix it.